Hi everyone, please listen to me carefully. Especially O. Yes, the one who never asks for help. Because you've learned that the world forgets to check on the strong ones. The one who holds it all together, while your own heart quietly fractures. I see you. And I want you to know this strength was never meant to be a prison. It was supposed to be your freedom. And today, you're allowed to rest. You wake up every morning and the first thing you do is carry weight. Not yours. Theirs. You carry your mother's worry, your partner's stress, your children's dreams, your colleagues' expectations. You carry it quietly, efficiently, the way engineers carry blueprints, folded neatly, stored in mental drawers labeled later and not now. And I'll deal with this when everyone else is safe. You were taught young that being strong meant being silent about your own needs. That vulnerability was weakness. That asking for support was burdening others. So you built armor, layer by layer, stone by stone. You constructed yourself into a fortress, impenetrable and reliable, and everyone came to live inside your walls while you stood guard outside in the cold. And nobody asked if you were tired. Because strong people don't get tired, right? Strong people don't break. They don't cry in parked cars or stare at ceilings at 3 in the morning wondering if anyone would notice if they just stopped. Stopped smiling. Stopped solving. Stopped being the answer to everyone else's equation. But here's what they don't tell you about strength. It's expensive. Every time you swallow your own pain to make room for someone else's comfort, you pay a price. Every time you say, "I'm fine," when you're drowning, you mortgage a piece of your soul. And the interest compounds. Silently, invisibly. Until one day you realize you've been living on autopilot for so long that you forgot what it feels like to actually be alive. Society taught you this. It taught you that women who feel too much are hysterical. That women who need too much are needy. That women who speak too much are dramatic. So you learned to compress yourself, to minimize, to fit into smaller and smaller boxes of acceptable emotion until you became a master at occupying the least amount of space possible in your own life. You became the translator between everyone's chaos and everyone's peace, the emotional architect who builds bridges between people's pain and people's hope. And you do it beautifully, seamlessly, so well that nobody sees the cost. Nobody sees that every time you mediate a conflict, you're absorbing both sides of the damage. That every time you comfort someone, you're using energy you don't have. That every time you hold space for someone else's breakdown, you're postponing your own. And the hardest part? You're good at it. You're so good at being strong that people have made it your identity. She can handle it. She always knows what to do. She never complains. These became your resume, your brand, your worth. So you kept going. You kept showing up. You kept being the rock while your own foundation crumbled. Because what choice did you have? If you stopped, who would hold everything together? If you fell, who would catch you? You already knew the answer. Nobody. Because nobody ever learned to check on the lighthouse. Everyone just assumed it would always be there, always burning, always guiding ships to shore while standing alone in the storm. Fear became your companion. Not the loud kind of fear, the quiet kind. The kind that whispers, if you rest, they'll see you're not actually invincible. If you ask for help, they'll realize you're human. If you show weakness, they'll stop loving you. So you built your life around maintenance, maintaining appearances, maintaining peace, maintaining everyone else's version of who you needed to be. And in the process, you lost touch with who you actually are. You started to believe that your value was transactional, that love was earned through service, that rest was something you deserve only after you'd done enough, solved enough, sacrificed enough. But the goalpost kept moving, because enough was never a real destination. It was a mirage designed to keep you running. And you ran. God, you ran. You ran toward solutions and away from your own needs. You ran toward productivity and away from stillness. You ran toward everyone else's definition of strong and away from your own definition of whole. But running was exhausting. And you were tired. So tired that your body started sending you signals. Headaches that wouldn't quit, sleep that wouldn't come, a chest that felt heavy for no reason, A mind that couldn't stop racing, even when there was nothing left to solve. Your body was speaking a language you'd forgotten how to hear. It was saying, "Please, stop, rest." But you'd been trained to ignore it, trained to push through, trained to believe that acknowledging pain was the same as surrendering to it. So you kept going, until the weight became too much, until the armor became too heavy, until the fortress you built to protect everyone else became the prison that trapped you. And somewhere deep inside, in a place you rarely visit, a question started forming. A question so terrifying that you buried it immediately every time it surfaced. What if I stopped being strong? What if I let someone else hold me for once? What if I admitted that I'm not okay? But you didn't ask it out loud, because asking meant risking everything you'd built, your identity, your purpose, your worth. So you stayed silent, and the silence grew louder, and the loneliness grew deeper, and the exhaustion grew heavier, until now. Let me tell you something about strength that nobody ever explained to you. Real strength isn't the absence of vulnerability. It's the courage to be vulnerable anyway. It's not about never falling. It's about trusting that when you do fall, the ground won't swallow you whole. You've been operating under a false equation. You thought strength plus vulnerability equals weakness, but the actual math is different. Strength without vulnerability equals isolation. Strength with vulnerability equals connection. And connection is what makes us human. I've spent my life building rockets, electric cars, neural interfaces. I've tried to solve some of humanity's hardest problems. And you know what I've learned? The hardest engineering challenge isn't building a system that never breaks. It's building a system that can break and repair itself, that can fail and learn, that can admit limitation and still move forward. You are that system. And right now, you need repair. Think about it logically. If you had a machine, let's say a Tesla, and you ran it continuously without ever charging it, without ever maintaining it, without ever letting it rest, what would happen? It would fail. Not because it's weak, because it's finite. Because all systems, no matter how advanced, require energy input to sustain energy output. You are no different. You are remarkable, yes. Capable, yes. Strong, absolutely. But you are not infinite. And pretending to be infinite doesn't make you stronger. It makes you fragile in ways you can't see until you shatter. Here's what society got wrong. They told you that needing support makes you less. But in every complex system I've ever studied, from rocket engines to neural networks, redundancy is strength. Backup systems are smart design. Asking for help isn't failure. It's strategic resource allocation. When SpaceX builds a Falcon 9, we don't use one engine. We use 9. Why? Because if one fails, the others compensate. The mission continues. That's not weakness. That's intelligent engineering. That's how you build something that can actually reach orbit. You've been trying to be a single-engine rocket, carrying the weight of a multi-stage mission, and you're wondering why you keep feeling like you're going to explode. But here's the deeper truth, the one that hits different. When you really sit with it, you're allowed to rest not because you've earned it by doing enough. You're allowed to rest because you're human. Full stop. No conditions. No prerequisites. No waiting until everyone else is okay first. Rest isn't a reward for productivity. It's a requirement for existence. Let me tell you about a conversation I had once with someone who asked me how I handle the stress of running multiple companies, raising children, trying to make humanity multiplanetary. And my answer was simple. I don't handle it alone. I have teams, I have systems, I have people I trust, and on the days when I can't see clearly, I lean on them. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You think asking for help diminishes your strength. But consider this. Every major breakthrough in human history happened because someone had the courage to say, I don't know. I need help. Let's figure this out together. The moon landing wasn't one person. It was 400,000 people working in concert. The internet wasn't built by a lone genius. It was collaboration across decades and continents. progress requires collective effort. Why do you think your life should be any different? You've been holding yourself to an impossible standard. The standard of self-sufficiency that no human being was ever designed to meet. We are social creatures. We are built for interdependence. Your need for connection, for support, for someone to hold you when you're tired. That's not a bug in your design. That's a feature. And here's where it gets interesting. The very thing you're afraid will make you weak is actually what will make you whole. When you allow yourself to be seen in your struggle, you give others permission to do the same. When you admit you're tired, you create space for authentic connection. When you rest, you model healthy boundaries for everyone watching you. Your children are watching, your partner is watching, your friends are watching. And what they're learning from you right now is either that strength means suffering in silence, or that strength means honoring your humanity. Which lesson do you want to teach? Think about the people you love most in the world. If they came to you exhausted, overwhelmed, barely holding on, what would you tell them? You'd tell them to rest. You'd hold them. You'd insist they take care of themselves. You'd be angry if they kept pushing past their limits. So why do you give everyone else the compassion you refuse to give yourself? This is the paradox you're living in. You have infinite empathy for everyone else's humanity and zero tolerance for your own. You understand that other people need support, but you've convinced yourself that you're somehow exempt from that need. That's not strength. That's self-abandonment. And self-abandonment is a slow form of violence. It's the daily choice to betray your own needs in service of everyone else's comfort. It's the gradual erosion of your relationship with yourself until you become a stranger in your own life. But here's what gives me hope. You're here, you're reading this. Which means some part of you, maybe a small part, maybe a part you're afraid to listen to, is ready for something different. Ready to consider that there might be another way. That part of you, that's the real you. The one underneath all the conditioning and expectations and fear. The one who knows deep down that you deserve the same kindness you give to everyone else. Listen to that part, even if it's terrifying, even if it feels selfish, even if every voice you've ever internalized is screaming that you don't have time for this, that people need you, that you can't afford to be weak right now. Because here's the truth they don't tell you. Resting isn't giving up. It's gearing up. It's refueling. It's the necessary pause before the next phase of your mission. Rockets don't launch continuously. They have stages, they have countdowns, they have moments of stillness before ignition. And those moments aren't wasted time. They're essential preparation. You are between stages right now. And instead of honoring that, you're beating yourself up for not being in constant motion. But motion without direction is just chaos. Rest with intention is strategy. So what would it look like to actually rest? Not performative rest where you sit down, but your mind keeps working. Real rest. The kind where you release the weight. Where you let someone else hold the plans for a while. Where you give yourself permission to just be instead of constantly do. It would look like scary and unfamiliar, and maybe even uncomfortable at first, because you've spent so long in motion that stillness feels wrong. But I promise you this, on the other side of that discomfort is a version of you that you've been waiting to meet. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine a version of you that exists 6 months from now. She's still strong, still capable, still the person people trust and rely on, but there's something different about her. She's lighter, she smiles more easily. She sleeps through the night. She doesn't carry tension in her shoulders like a permanent accessory. What changed? She learned to rest. Not because life suddenly got easier, not because everyone else suddenly stopped needing her, but because she realized that her worth wasn't dependent on her usefulness, that her value wasn't measured in how much she could carry, that being loved wasn't the same as being needed. She learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges. Bridges between her and a sustainable version of strength. Bridges between exhaustion and energy. Bridges between who she was pretending to be and who she actually is. And the most incredible part? The people who truly loved her didn't leave when she started setting boundaries. They adjusted, they learned, they grew. Because real love doesn't require your destruction. Real love wants your wholeness. The others, the ones who are only around because of what you could do for them, they might fade. And that's okay. That's not loss. That's clarity. You're not losing people. You're losing burdens disguised as relationships.
Here's what I want you to understand. Every time you rest, you're not taking from others. You're giving to your future self. You're investing in your capacity to show up tomorrow, next month, next year. You're choosing sustainability over martyrdom.
And martyrdom, despite what we've been taught, is not noble. It's tragic, because it robs the world of the full version of you, the version that has energy left over for joy, for creativity, for dreams that have nothing to do with solving everyone else's problems. When was the last time you dreamed about something just for you? When was the last time you wanted something not because it would help someone else, but because it would make you happy? If you can't remember, that's not coincidence, that's consequence. The consequence of years of self-erasure, of putting yourself last so consistently that you forgot you were even on the list. But you can change this, starting now, starting with one small act of self-preservation. Maybe it's saying no to something you don't actually want to do. Maybe it's asking someone else to handle a problem instead of automatically volunteering. Maybe it's taking a walk alone without your phone, without a destination, without a purpose other than breathing. Maybe it's just sitting in silence and letting yourself feel what you've been running from. The sadness, the anger, the exhaustion, the grief for all the years you spent being strong instead of being whole. Feel it. Don't fix it. Don't analyze it. Don't immediately turn it into a lesson or a plan or a strategy. Just feel it. Because unfelt emotions don't disappear. They accumulate. They live in your body, in your tension, in your insomnia, in your unexplained anxiety. And when you finally let them move through you, when you finally stop fighting them, something remarkable happens. They pass. They don't destroy you. They don't prove you're weak. They just pass, like weather, like waves, like everything that seems permanent until you stop resisting it. This is the transformation. Not becoming someone different, becoming more of who you already are underneath all the armor. Softer, more honest, more connected to your own humanity. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but if I soften, I'll break. But that's backwards. Rigid things break. Flexible things bend. Trees that survive hurricanes aren't the strongest ones. They're the ones that know how to move with the wind. You've been trying to be oak when you need to be willow. Solid when you need to be fluid. Immovable when you need to be adaptive. Strength isn't rigidity, it's resilience. And resilience requires rest. Think about athletes. The best ones in the world, they don't train 24/7. They have rest days. They have recovery protocols. They understand that muscle doesn't grow during the workout, it grows during the rest. The workout breaks it down. The rest builds it back stronger. Your life is the same. The challenges break you down. The rest builds you back. But you've been skipping the rest. So you're just breaking down continuously, wondering why you're not getting stronger. You're not weak. You're depleted. There's a difference. Weak is inability. Depleted is temporary state. Weak is permanent. Depleted is fixable. And you fix it the same way you'd fix any depleted resource. You replenish it. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to treat yourself like you would treat something precious that you're responsible for protecting. Because you are precious, and you are responsible for protecting yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Make a list, not of things you need to do, of things you need, not want need. What does your body need? What does your mind need? What does your heart need? And then, radical thought here, give yourself those things. Not after you've done everything else. Not when you've earned it. Now, today, this week. Start small if you have to. 10 minutes of sitting outside. One honest conversation with someone you trust. One night of full sleep without guilt. One meal eaten slowly without multitasking. One moment where you're not solving, not planning, not managing, just being. String those moments together. Let them accumulate. Let them remind you what it feels like to be a person instead of a function. And watch what happens. Watch how your capacity expands when it's no longer operating on fumes. Watch how your patience returns when you're not running on deficit. Watch how your joy resurfaces when you make room for it. This isn't selfish. This is survival. And not just survival evolution. Evolution into someone who can sustain what they're building instead of collapsing under the weight of it. You were never meant to carry the world alone. Atlas was punished with that burden. It was literally a punishment in Greek mythology. And yet somehow, you volunteered for it. You looked at an impossible task and said, "I'll handle it." But you don't have to. You were never supposed to. And the moment you put down what was never yours to carry, you'll discover something beautiful, your actual life. The one that exists when you're not performing strength for an audience that never asked for the show. The people who love you, truly love you, they don't need you to be invincible. They need you to be real. They need you to be present. They need you to be well. And being well requires rest, requires honesty, requires the courage to say, "I'm struggling, I need help. I can't do this alone." Those words won't make you weak, they'll make you free. I think about the future a lot. It's kind of my thing. I think about Mars colonies and sustainable energy and neural interfaces that could change what it means to be human. I think about the big problems, the impossible challenges, the things people say can't be done. But lately I've been thinking about something smaller, more personal, more immediate. I've been thinking about you, about all the people like you who are trying to build better worlds for everyone else, while their own world crumbles quietly. About the caretakers who forget to care for themselves. About the strong ones who are so tired of being strong. And I've realized something, the future we're trying to build, the sustainable, equitable, conscious future. It requires people who have learned to sustain themselves first. You can't build a conscious civilization out of unconscious self-destruction. We need you whole, not broken and useful, whole and powerful, rested and clear, present and connected. Because here's what I know about systems, about progress, about real change. It doesn't happen through sacrifice. It happens through wisdom. And wisdom requires rest, requires perspective, requires the space to think beyond survival mode. You can't innovate when you're in constant crisis. You can't create when you're in constant depletion. You can't build something sustainable when you yourself are running on unsustainable patterns. So your rest isn't selfish. It's revolutionary. It's the first act of building something different. Not just for you, for everyone who's watching you, everyone who's learning from you, everyone who will inherit the world you're creating. What do you want them to inherit? The pattern of self-destruction disguised as strength? Or the wisdom of knowing when to push and when to pause? Every great story has a moment where the hero stops running and faces the truth, where they choose differently, where they break the pattern that's been breaking them. This is your moment. Not someday when things calm down, not eventually when you've done enough. Now, today, this breath. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to need. You are allowed to be human. You are allowed to release the weight of expectations that were never realistic in the first place. You are allowed to say, "I've been strong for so long, and I'm tired, and I need help." And that doesn't make me weak. It makes me wise. Because real strength knows its limits. Real power knows when to pause. Real love, against self-love, knows that care isn't earned, it's required. I want you to imagine one more thing with me. Imagine that version of you from earlier 6 months from now, lighter, rested, whole. She's looking back at today, at this moment, at this choice, and she's grateful. Not because everything magically got easier, but because you chose her. You chose your future self over your present suffering. You chose sustainability over martyrdom. You chose rest over resentment. That choice, that one choice to honor your humanity, it ripples forward. It changes everything that comes after. It becomes the foundation of a different way of living, one where strength and softness coexist, where caring for others and caring for yourself aren't competing priorities, where you can be both powerful and human. This is possible. Not easy, not immediate, but possible. And it starts with one brave act, putting yourself on the list of people you're allowed to care about. You've spent so long being everyone's answer. Maybe it's time to be your own. To ask yourself what you need and actually listen to the response. To treat your own tiredness with the same urgency you treat everyone else's emergencies. The world doesn't need another exhausted hero. It needs whole humans building sustainable systems. And you can't build what you haven't embodied. So rest. Not as weakness, as wisdom. Not as giving up, as gearing up. Not as the end of your strength, as the evolution of it. Rest so you can heal. Heal so you can grow. Grow so you can build. Build something that lasts because it was created from wholeness instead of depletion. Your rest is an act of resistance against a culture that profits from your exhaustion. Your boundaries are an act of revolution against systems that require your self-destruction. Your healing is an act of creation, creating the version of you that's been waiting beneath all the armor. Thought math. Yep. And when you rest, when you finally let yourself be held, instead of always holding, something beautiful happens. You remember what it feels like to be more than your function, to be loved for existing, not for performing, to be valued for being, not just doing. That remembering, that's coming home to yourself, to the part of you that never needed to prove anything, that was always enough, always worthy, always deserving of the same care you give everyone else. You are not a machine. You are not a tool. You are not just your utility. You are a human being having a complex experience in a difficult world, and you're doing better than you think, even on the days when it doesn't feel like it, even when you're barely holding on, even when you think you're failing. You're not failing. You're just finally being honest about the cost of carrying what you've been carrying. And that honesty, that brave, terrifying honesty, is where transformation begins. So take a breath, a real one, deep and slow. And as you exhale, release just a little bit of the weight, not all of it, just a little, just enough to remember that you can. Tomorrow you can release a little more, and the day after that, a little more, until eventually you're carrying only what's actually yours to carry, until your strength is sustainable instead of self-destructive. This is the future I see for you. Not perfect, not painless, but whole, rested, free. And it's waiting. Not someday, now, right on the other side of the choice to rest. The choice to finally, after all this time, be strong enough to be soft. Reputation and to you. To cake trainers I left directly. That experience the beast thought listing. And hurts me so correct the start.
Put in between him. But that is. If I'm the last.
You've been so strong for so long, for everyone else. Now it's time to be strong for you. And being strong for you looks like rest, because the strongest thing you can do is honor your humanity instead of destroy it.